I'll get the agenda going here. Welcome, everybody. Approval of agenda. I think I wanted to maybe move up Mark and Natalie a little earlier in our agenda. I have them late on the agenda, if that's okay with everybody. Move them up. Great. I don't know, I guess we gotta appoint the chair and vice chair and secretary first, but then we can do that, welcome them after that, if that's okay with everybody.
I don't know why.
Thanks. Is there approval of the agenda with the adjustment to move those guys up earlier?
Sure.
Motion to approve the agenda and move Mark and Natalie up.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, approval of minutes, did we get some?
I emailed them.
Oh,
Yeah, I looked at them.
they look okay?
It looks good to
You
me.
guys, I'm gonna move this. I don't know why this isn't working.
Oh, okay.
By HD, if that works better.
So, I think we're still on, so that's good. Well, is there a motion to approve the minutes then? Folks,
I'll make that motion.
okay,
I'll second it.
Kevin,
Oh,
all in
that's what it was.
favor? Aye,
Yeah.
opposed, no? Okay, organizational meeting. Move on. You guys gonna elect me again, or do you want somebody else wants to do the chair?
You're doing a great job.
Who wants to be vice chair then, Kevin?
Not me. I don't have too many
I'll
committees.
make the motion to elect Doug as the president.
Chair.
Or chair. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? How about Cindy? She's doing a great job, the secretary, I'll manage her.
You know what? I mean, I don't mind being like recording secretary,
Okay.
but I thought, and I didn't read the bylaws, I remember Al Taylor saying that a township official can't be like an officer on a committee.
Okay,
I don't know if it's true or not, so, I mean, let's just not do it, I'll still like take the minutes. I don't have a problem with
Okay.
that.
okay, we'll leave the other two.
We can have
vacant.
another secretary that is in name or whatever.
Alexa joining us today.
I had,
Takes good notes. That's not in the bylaws, so if that is the case, then.
It's not, and I don't know why,
Says.
I don't know if it's true or not.
Officers shall consist of chair, vice chair, secretary. Election of officers shall be majority vote. Officer may resign at any time. In case of vacancy, an officer position, the commission shall hold an election to fill such vacancy for the remainder of term.
So the only thing
That's
I
it.
wouldn't know then is if there was a policy.
And like, so for me, being MCD staff, we have an internal policy that I can't be an officer on any of the boards that I serve on. So
So that didn't fail.
yeah, it's gotta be one of those two guys that are.
twice for Alexa to do it.
All in favor, say yeah.
You're putting her where?
Secretary.
Who are we doing vice chair?
That's Phil.
That's good.
No, it's not me.
Somebody's got, Alexis and Tyler can't be because of their policies. so-
I'll do the secretary, Phil can be the vice president,
Okay, okay.
as long as Cindy helps do the notes.
Yeah, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So now, moving on to, I'd like to introduce Mark, Natalie. Can you hear us okay? I don't know if I can hear you yet. Oh, you're still muted.
So I've got my microphone on. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
Mark, just one little housekeeping thing. At our special meeting, normally, like anytime we have a meeting, if there's a contract, the supervisor signs it right away, but they were doing an election commission after. So I got a hold of our clerk today, said, hey, I need a copy of this contract. She said, oh, no problem. I'll have Dave sign it. He's in San Francisco till Thursday.
Oh,
So I can't get you a signed copy till Thursday.
But it has been approved?
Oh,
from the
yeah.
Township board?
Yeah, we approved it Friday.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
okay. We won't sign off.
Yeah, just so you know.
That's fine. I appreciate you letting us know that, but
Yeah.
that's totally fine for
But
us.
like I said, it's approved, so.
Okay, put it up to Mark, I guess, soon as, what did I have here, review the lake manager proposed schedule and the efforts for 2025, I guess, is what I had. Or whatever you'd like to talk about, you two.
Sure. Why don't we do this? If I can, I'm going to try if we can have permission to share a screen.
Yeah,
Yes, please do.
yeah.
I
Oh,
think I might be able to pop this up here. Let's see. I think that's it.
there you are, looks like it's
Okay.
coming in. It's not quite here yet, give us a second, oh, there it is, okay. Good to go, Mark, thanks.
Yeah, everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. I would zoom it up a little bit more, but this goofy bar off to the right just doesn't go away and it always kind of overwrites everything. So we'll squint a little bit here. So good afternoon, everybody. It's great that we've been able to connect. We're really excited about the project. I know there was some good back and forth around some of the desires for some of the contracting this year. Those, I think, have worked out, and it sounds like you guys have gone ahead with PLM for 2025.
Yes, that's correct, we have, and, yeah, Bree put in for the permit, and she jumped right on it, I think she billed us for $1,000, but we now have a contract for treatment with PLM this year.
Okay, great. So we're certainly happy to work with Bree on this. We work with PLM on a couple of other lakes, and so Bree has always been great to work with, and some of the questions that we have that may pop up as we start to move forward in the schedule, Bree had told me before, yeah, just ask. And so I think that some of those questions will come up around specific locations on the tributaries where they were sampling. We want to make sure that we're consistent with that. And then stormwater outfalls, just we can work with you folks to just confirm location on that. But we want to be sure that wherever we're sampling this year is consistent with where PLM has been sampling in years past. And so we'll have the opportunity certainly in May when Natalie's there and Dr. Doug Pullman is there for K&A to walk through not only what we're seeing in the lake, but also some of those other sampling locations as well. So with that said, what I'm going to jump to right away here, and Natalie will be our contact person for you guys. Natalie is the project manager. You'll see her on the lake. You'll be seeing her in May, and then our field manager, Josh, will be also involved. He'll be doing a lot of the tributary monitoring and the stormwater monitoring as well. We're working with our team that's out in the field to do those things. And Josh has got 15, 18 years of stormwater monitoring. So that'll be a good asset for our team to make sure that we're getting what we need to get and where we need to collect that information from. So the table 2 that we have up, this was from our original proposal submission. And it walks through the timing of our major events, and these correspond to each one of our tasks that we proposed. And so, Natalie, I'm going to take the liberty here of just walking through the schedule, and then I may default to you and talk about you can talk about some of the finite coordination on those particular items. One of the things that we're doing now, and Doug, you had provided me with a copy of PLM's 2024 report a month or so ago. So once we've gotten this go ahead now, we've gone through and reviewed that. It's very consistent with what we saw in 2023. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that if there was any change or any nuance or any discovery that they had in 2024 that we had not seen in 2023 is just to make note of that. And so One of the things that I've done is I've gone through the document, because I did the original review of the 2023. I think there are still a couple things in 2024 that we'll work on this year, around especially some of the reporting on the water quality monitoring. Natalie's going through the document to review the findings and the treatment scheme that unfolded in 2023, or excuse me, 2024. And we'll use that as kind of the springboard for what we want to be looking for. Then in item B, 1B, which is the preseason survey, it's making sure that, and it'd be great having PLM there because they did the treatment. Going back to those spots that they repeatedly tended to see some of the invasives or some of the problems, where they may have had repeat treatments. That's typically what we do with any of the applicators that have been involved in the lakes, is going back to those spots that have always been a problem or were recently discovered as a problem and have received treatment. So the preseason survey is not extensive, like it is when we get into the June and the August surveys. The preseason is really to say, all right, in anticipation of where we're seeing some of the invasives, it's helping to then work with you folks, the township and PLM to say, this is where we expect we're going to have the first treatments, and the timing of those treatments will be worked out with the contractor, with PLM, with us, and with you folks. But again, this preseason survey in May is a chance for representatives from the committee, from the township, us, and for PLM to all be on the same boat, be looking at the same water and the same plants, if you will, and they'd be making decisions on what we would expect for that, the first treatment for the year. I'm going to ask Natalie if you would, if you just kind of come on, and because you've done a lot of the preseason surveys, is just in terms of talking about the mapping that you do with the applicator, and then how that is shared.
Yeah, so Doug and I will be going up there, sometime around May. I know with the way that Labor Day is falling this year, we might get pushed a little bit back. So we will typically go and meet on the boat, and we'll draft up a treatment map, kind of like a rough draft out in the field to make sure that, the township, the residents who are joining us on the boat, members of the board, PLM, that we're all kind of on the same page. And then from that draft, we'll kind of send out a finalized version, and it's kind of a living document. So the people who are using the lake kind of know best. So then from there, we'll listen to feedback from the team, and usually we'll schedule a treatment right during that preseason survey. And then between the time of that survey and like 48 hours out of the treatment, we will make any edits to the map that kind of the team feels necessary. And then I believe that we're also slated to kind of be on site with those treatments as well, to kind of watch and make sure that those areas are being hit. So it's really a community, like a kind of like a committee effort, everybody involved, and then like living areas where we can kind of adapt them as needed. So that's like typically kind of how it looks out there in the field, and then that gives everybody time that we can finally meet kind of face to face and ask any questions. And then it's a good way to just make sure that everybody on the team is on the same page.
So this was a question, Cindy, that came up from the township attorney, and you and I think discussed a little bit, is, all right, whose boat is it? And so what we typically will do, and this is out there for the committee, we usually work with a resident and that has a pontoon boat, one that, is on the lake, come that, mid-May to late May. We'll all kind of pile on that particular pontoon, and we're asking for a resident to volunteer their boat and their time for a couple of hours, several hours in the lake, to take the whole group around. Now,
I don't,
we have a large, we've got a 21-foot sampling vessel, but it's not a pontoon and it's not comfortable for lots of people to be on that particular boat. And then we've got a 14-footer and a 12-foot skiff. So what usually works best is if there's a resident that has a pontoon that's ready to go and would be willing to escort us around the lake. That's always worked well. It gives us a kind of that connection time as well with the residents. And usually this is somebody that may be active. Doug, I don't know if that would be you or somebody else on this particular committee. But normally that's what we would plan on doing is we'll schedule that in advance. Natalie will start, once we get closer to May and into early May, we'll start coordinating times for mid to late month that we would be on Portage Lake as this group and keep that schedule and hold everybody to that. And then if somebody can't make it, certainly time for replacement. But usually we have anywhere from 4 to 8 people that may want to participate in that. A little bit more than that, you need a pretty big pontoon. But again, we'll be doing some rake tows over the side of the boat where we get to these areas that are in question, and we're kind of examining both the plants that we may be observing or that we need to observe, and then mapping the boundaries. So if you picture, like PLM has maps in their reports that show these areas where they've done treatment and they've kind of has hash marks within that area where they've treated. That's essentially what will be the product of this meeting. As Natalie said, is we want to take a couple days to reflect on that and make sure that everybody is that, hey, wait, we may want to adapt this area here. And it's close to this other area. If there's linkages there. So ultimately, when PLM gets on the lake for the first time to do the chemical applications, we're pretty much in sync. But then again, it could be, once the water starts warming and we get longer days, you could start seeing growth of in some of these areas where it may have been really low at the time of the May survey. By the time they're potentially there in early June or mid-June, whatever that treatment period is, it may have grown up. And so we want to make sure that, hey, they can color outside of the boundaries, if you will. That if something has expanded, we don't want to say, well, hey, we said don't go crossing this line, and then we miss an area that needed treatment. So we're trying to keep it flexible with the applicator. As Natalie said, we'll also be out there when they're scheduled to be treating under our task 2. We will have, I think that's task 2A, we'll have one of our staff out there in our boat separate from theirs and just be kind of tagging along with where they're treating and making notes. And that gives us the opportunity also at the same time to be able to say, all right, are they consistent with what they're hitting? Or if they run into an area that needs to be expanded, or fingers crossed, an area that just is not problematic that was in May, and they need to be able to make a treatment decision at that point, we'll be able to immediately interact with them at that point. So there's no delay. And that way we help them be efficient on the lake. And at the same time, if they have questions, we'd be available there to support them as well. So once the treatment is done, we're usually back out there then within anywhere from 8 to 14 days after that treatment. And that will be what you see next on the schedule, which is the early season survey, task 1A. And again, that's usually in June. It's a week or 2 after the treatment. This is one of the 2 comprehensive aquatic vegetation surveys that we'll do on the lake for the year. First one we call early season, that's June. The second one, which is listed here as task 1D, that's the late season survey that comes in August. And the idea is, especially in the June survey, is we'll be out there after they've treated. So we'll have a sense of what it was in May. We'll be back out there in June. And this is when we do our extensive mapping of the entire lake. Wherever you have plants that are growing or that are aquatic vegetation that is seen in the bottom waters, we have I think we expressed a map that has dots and numbers on it in the proposal. Well, actually, that's a kind of the centroid of a grid pattern. So we call it a polygon. We draw a box around the area. And so all of the work that Natalie and her staff do in the boat, we have an iPad. So they're constantly referring to that map that has the locator on it. And within each one of those geometric cells that we have on the map, they'll be doing several observations, a number of different rake throws. And so it's not just a singular point. They're going to, hey, what's here? And then we move over, 80 yards to the next point. It's rather really looking within that area, because real-time mapping, they'll have their location is instantaneous feedback because it's GPS mapping at the same time. So they'll be recording information in each one of those cells in June. And that, like I said, that's a comprehensive survey that looks at all of the plant conditions and all the plants. And we'll use that as a really good indicator of saying kind of both the ecological condition of the early season, but then at the same time, are we seeing other patches of invasive plants that may be growing that need a second treatment, or maybe showing up for the first time. But the idea is it's really a very finite, a very detailed snapshot of the lake in June. Now, knowing where PLM will be treating and then being out there about 7 to 14 days afterwards will give us a chance to really look at those areas that were treated and make an assessment of it worked, it didn't work. We need to consider later in the summer maybe expanding that or repeating it. But all in all, this is really the kind of the first solid look of the lake conditions at that time. We'll do the same in August, and sometimes that does correlate with 7 to 10, 14 days after a treatment. Otherwise, it's scheduled in June, because different plants will grow early in the summer versus later in the summer, and it really gives us that better through the season look at what's happening in the lake with these plants. The other element that comes into this, so we'll bump back to task 2A, is we'll be back out about 30 days after the treatment occurs as well. That will be a quick visit to be able to say, all right, we know 30 days ago they treated in these areas. We'll have kind of that mid, 1 to 2 week look at it, and then we'll have a month look at it as well. And so that's kind of the task 2 treatment follow-ups, whereas the June and the August surveys really have the heavy ecological bent, but at the same time, we'll be looking at treatment conditions as well. I'll stop.
I think we had a question, Mark, go ahead, Skylar.
So just a question on, as far as looking at diversity and abundance of the lake vegetation, the summer treatment, early season treatment is inventory is taking place after the treatment. Is it the same for the late season survey? I'm just wondering where we have documentation then that shows the amount of invasive species in the lake on the survey. So we can look and say pre-post treatment or general conditions without treatment, what is the status of Portage Lake?
Yeah, Natalie, you want to handle that?
So if there's a late season treatment, we will also aim for that kind of week to 2 weeks after treatment for our August survey as well. And we do comparisons between the two to gauge how treatment has been impacted over time. And so what our mapping will kind of show, so we'll include maps of where we're seeing kind of our species of interest or invasive species. And then we'll also include the applicator maps of where they treated. And then that gives a comparison of how the density and distribution of the species may or may not have been impacted by the treatments. And then after each survey, we also always do summaries of what we saw. So we'll have kind of like the original map that we will all draft in the field in the preseason. And then we will have like the finalized map that reflects like the actual treatment conditions, and then we'll go out there and survey conditions, make notes of kind of the impacts that we're seeing on the species, kind of using those known treatment areas. And then we'll summarize the treatment efficacy that we observed during our survey. And then in the late season survey, if there's not a late season treatment, we can gauge the efficacy of the treatments over the course of the summer. So if there's only one treatment at the beginning of the year, that gives us a pretty good window of like, how did the species potentially rebound or not rebound, which can give us insights onto if the treatment regime was effective over multiple weeks. Because ideally, we'd want the fewest amount of treatments and the highest amount of efficacy possible. So kind of breaking them up that way is kind of our system.
So with that though, I think the other part of, but if I can, one of the things is we're not just in June and August, we're not just looking at what was treated, it's really over the lake. So one of the interesting aspects of the mapping is we'll be able to map, and it's almost developing in real time when we're out in the field, is we'll map the density of all plant, the entire plant community in the lake, but it will also break it down by species. So we'll be able to say for each species is like, hey, this is 30% coverage of Cara in the bottom. We'll be able to map that around the lake where you have some of the heaviest densities. And what we do is it's not just presence absence. The mapping actually gives a coverage density, if you will. So you may see a map that has, if it's Cara, and you'll see maybe a lot of yellow to red dots, if you will, kind of a heat map saying, hey, here's where you have the most coverage of this particular plant, or in this case, a macroalgal species. So it gives you a map of not only the bad, it gives you a map of the good and talks about the densities. Then we break that down in the final report. We say in June, here was the distribution of plants in the lake, August, the distribution, what changed over the season. And even though we haven't done surveys on the lake prior to 2025, the AVAS survey data that PLM has been collecting is still suitable for us to be tracking over time what they were doing and what's the trend beyond that. Ours gets into a little bit more detail than what an AVAS survey does, but the analysis that we do can still use the AVAS collected data. So we continue, it's not starting over with a clean slate. Hey, we don't know what happened previously. It's we can take what happened previously and continue to map that in terms of some of the trend work that PLM had done. But at the same time, we've got about 5 different ecological metrics that we use that say, hey, look, in the grand scheme of things, if we want to think about good fish habitat in terms of aquatic plants, one of those metrics that talks about the type of plant, its height in the water column, those relate to science-based metrics that we use to say, look, comparatively, these are meeting what we think are what we've established as ecological goals. Some lakes that are really overrun by invasive species. Most of these metrics, we go kind of on a scorecard of red, yellow, and green. If you're green, you're great. If you're yellow, you're almost there. If you're red, we've got a ways to go, just in terms of the condition of the lake in the context of these metrics. So it's looking at what was treated, but then also in the context of what else is out there. Because if something is treated and removed, something else can come in. That's the idea. Over time, are the other native plants moving back into these areas where you're starting to see a decline in Eurasian water milfoil, or you're starting to see other plants come back in its absence?
Did that answer your question then, Tyler?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions before the? Okay, thank you. Please continue. Or I guess I have one question. I guess I'd like Natalie's contact information too, or can you share that either email or sometimes a text works well too. So I think I've shared mine with you, at least my phone number through that. So That would be something I would like to see, especially if we're gonna be scheduling. And as far as a pontoon boat,
I got a thought after I was thinking about it, if we could have Natalie maybe, drill down a little bit and give us, a little more specific time. We should talk to maybe Ted at the arena. They have a rental
That's what I
pontoon.
was wondering.
And he more than likely would work with us, but he'd wanna know a date and if it's, cause he rents them. Once the season started, he rents them almost every day,
yeah,
but not during the week. And as long as we stay away from a weekend and earlier in the season, the more apt they'd be available.
I had another thought on it too, cause I know as the invasive species committee, we're supposed to keep a relationship with the watershed group.
Yeah.
And I think most of them pontooners, so they might have an interest to go out for the preseason survey and let us use their
Good point.
pontooner.
Could be, I just don't know who those people are.
yeah,
I serve on, me and Alexis both serve on the watershed committee too, so I could take that to the meeting.
Sure.
Cause that's the other thing, I don't know who here necessarily can make time. It would depend on my schedule to be out there. So.
Yeah, that's why if she could maybe just drill down and get a window,
Mhm,
then we could, see who's available and
yeah,
yeah,
start planning.
if there's no interest and don't have a lot of people, I have a boat that, 5, 6 people comfortably. But that's got, it's got a lift on the lake, so
Yeah.
anytime, that's available, you guys are welcome to take that if you wish to.
well, it sounds like they have a boat too, unless we
Right.
have a ton of people. I don't think we're gonna get a lot of community
No.
members that wanna be out, so
Have to get in the
realistically,
back.
it's them, PLM, a representative from PLM, maybe one of us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
So,
And the township, if you got desperate too, they probably would give up the fireboat. I mean, the fire department, the township's got a rescue boat,
mhm,
it's usually in the water by then,
yeah,
But I think the notion is if we can get a couple folks that are engaged in the process for the committee, the township, or even the watershed group. It's helpful for everybody to kind of have the conversations early together, because when you play telephone tag at, wait, I thought he said, or I thought she said,
Yeah.
and I think we're all there together. It just, it allows people to provide input too. It's like, hey, this year, we've been seeing a big outbreak of something over in the cove. And I think that's the communication that's valuable, that there's some lakes that we just have absolutely no communication with. They have no volunteers, they have no interest. The county is running the program. And then it's sometimes you get a stray call that comes in and says, well, hey, who do I call? We've seen this. This way it just provides one more connection for the committee and the township through the process here.
I'll also just add that on our end, tentatively, we're shooting for the last week in May for our preseasons, and then because of the way Labor Day is falling, maybe the first day or two of June.
Memorial.
yeah.
Oh, yes, Memorial Day, not Labor Day.
And that's not unusual for some of the northern lakes.
Yeah.
That are wild for the plant growth to pop up. Some of our southern Michigan lakes,
Right,
come April, you've already got pretty hardy growth of some of the plants. But with the temperatures the way they are, we're usually
Right.
seeing a delay as we move north.
okay, that makes sense.
So
Yeah, I'm good so far, with those dates, so I'll be available, I guess.
So with these,
Okay. Please go ahead, Mark. We were just talking about who was gonna be available at the committee and,
yeah, and I'm
Right.
sorry, I didn't want to step over the top of you there.
no, thank you.
So with the preseason survey, the other thing that we'll be doing is we'll be collecting some chlorophyll A samples in nearshore areas. That was kind of laid out. It's what PLM had been doing, but we specified in our contract that nearshore sampling would occur early in the spring. We'd be doing some chlorophyll A. And Natalie and Josh and I talked this morning about the preseason survey too, is oftentimes, and especially in southern Michigan lakes, by that time of the year, you've got a lot of filamentous green algal growth in the shallows. You see it's Eulothrix, others that other green algae that you might see at the time, that it's just these big fibrous green algal mats in the near shore. And so one of the questions that comes up is, well, shouldn't we be treating that? And so we'll go up and with Doug on the boat as well. Doug's got 40 years of treatment chemistry, as well as what could be done if it's a problem. In some lakes, there's so much early production of filamentous green algae that once the water just starts to kind of get too hot for those green algae, they die off, and you got big floating globs of goo. Oftentimes there's not much you can do with that, but if it becomes a problem in the early season, we'll want to be talking about that too, and making some observations of, are there other treatment applications that could be considered to knock that back? It may not be necessary, it may not be a problem, but those are just some of the nuances in the preseason survey that we'll be talking about on the boat. But again, we'll be collecting some water samples along with that.
So then just.
Go ahead.
Just a little bit around Easy Street, you might see that. That's where, if you look at some of the other data, or previous year data, you notice some of the nutrients coming in that area, so.
Yeah, there's some different things going on over at that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just, there's different plant dieback, there's some scum on some of the substrate through there, some what looks like calcareous deposits. I don't think that's what it is, but yeah, just some iffy stuff going on a little bit at Easy Street.
Yeah, so that's one place that we'll have to take a look at when you guys get here, is over there, but otherwise, I've not seen too much of it anywhere else.
Well, that's the kind of feedback that's really valuable for us too, is because if it's patchy, you don't see it every year. That's important to know. In some of these lakes where we've seen increasing nutrient loading in the springtime, it gets worse and worse. And so at some point there may be a desire to go out and treat that, but if you don't need to treat it because it's a very temporary condition, we never say, well, let's go out and treat it just to be preventative necessarily. But if it's a problem and the timing is still such that it still can proliferate, there might be consideration of treatment, but the stuff dies off pretty quickly once the water temperature warms up. And they're limited by nutrients, light, and temperature. And if it just gets out of that cooler temperature, it's going to die off. And then now you're seeing it kind of floating around. Eventually it sinks. But, again, looking at some of those conditions in the spring and then or early summer, late spring, and then getting feedback from you folks will be important. The other thing that will be happening when we do the June and the August surveys is we'll be doing water quality at the 2 deep stations in the lake. And we are also going to be piggybacking on the 2 sets of tributary sampling that we'll be doing, one then in June and then one in August. The separate stormwater drain sampling is item 1E here, and we'll be looking for a wet weather condition for that particular sampling. That could actually occur in the next month or 2. And the notion is usually the springtime is where you have the largest loads. You have built up of dirt on the roadways, nutrients, heavy metals, but in this case, we're really looking at TP, total phosphorus, and nitrate. And so getting that sampling done in the springtime is something that we're focused on now for scheduling. Otherwise, the trip sampling will have that corresponding to the 2 lake surveys in June and August. There'll be a variety of parameters that we'll collect there, including E. coli. one of the things we talked about this morning, if we could just take a sidebar here on the E. coli, the bacteria sampling. We know the health department has got a regimen that they're, every summer they're sampling on a number of the beaches. And it looks like a couple tributaries. I don't know whether PLM has interacted with the county health department folks or not, but we certainly will be interacting with them because we've identified that the bacterial samples, correct me if I'm off on this, Natalie, is we would bring those to the local health department. So we'll be making contact, but we won't necessarily be involved in their beach monitoring programs. But we'll coordinate with them because we'd like to be, if we can get the same lab to run the samples, at the health department, that just kind of eliminates some of the unknowns with, hey, it was this lab versus that lab. And bacteria is kind of an oddball from time to time. So having the same lab do that's going to be important. And again, we'll coordinate with the county on that. I think
I was once told, Mark, that they did some sort of, with that E. coli, and they wanted to find out if it were human or animal, and it's just hearsay. I don't know if I ever saw this written anywhere, or at least can't remember. But it was identified as animal, not human, causes for E. coli, so, I don't know if that helps at all, but I know that the county fairgrounds are right there, but, one of our higher concentrations, but those are only active short periods of time in the year, so I just kind of wanted to mention that. And one other thing is, I do have a hard drive that has a drone flyover, and this was several years ago, have a drone flyover of the whole shoreline of the lake. That I'd like to make that available for you. You can take a look at that. It might be useful. It's, too large to, to email or send or anything like that. You'll have to just borrow the hard drive for a little while if you want to use that data.
Well, I think that, that brings up a topic that is kind of set aside for task 3, which are what are some of the other issues that are being seen or interest by the committee or the township to investigate a little bit further in terms of what's happening in the lake. One of those suggestions was the fish habitat survey work that we do, and what that, there's it's not the Score the Shoreline program that's out there now, which is it's available, but when we're doing our surveys, we'll also, if we're also doing the fisheries analysis, is we'll score both the nearshore conditions and then the riparian conditions moving away from that. And Doug, I recall, in fact, I think it was with this committee, the conversations around natural shorelines, the hardening of shorelines that you guys are seeing with some of the new developments and the rest. So my suggestion would be is that as we start to collect some of these data for the summer, is coming back to revisit whether or not there are value-added approaches that we might want to consider that kind of speak to the 2023 fisheries survey in terms of the habitat side, not just what's present in terms of the fishery. But part of those conversations will be along some of the shoreline issues. I don't want to skip too far past the comments you had about E. coli. So if the health department has done some testing and they've done some source tracking and those data are available, I don't think I've seen any of the source tracking information that was reported out by PLM.
Yeah.
That would be,
Taylor was one told us.
The township requested it, as I recall.
Yeah.
They wanted a little more definitive about, yeah, you got E. coli, but what's the source? And I think they paid, or I don't know, somehow, I don't know if it's PLM or through the health department, they did something, and Al would be more privy to it, but
Yeah.
they did, I remember reading about it in the paper, they did some more follow-up on, what was the source? And I remember what Doug said, he said it was animal. And so that's all I recall, but
Yeah,
it was, I think it was requested by the township to get Ed Bradford would probably know, because he was one of the guys that I remember reading him quoted in the article.
oh, okay. Okay, we'll try to get you that information,
Sure.
Mark.
We've seen a couple of the tributaries seem to recurrently have higher levels, sometimes exceeding the partial full body contact levels. And so, I mean, it's important to know where those are. If they're small tributaries, but they're near a public beach, that's always a question. Then I know you have it's a fairly small watershed, and I looked at some of the watershed management planning data that also talked about septic system distribution throughout the drainage area to the lake. The numbers that we've looked at are not raging, so like, you're going to have necessarily beach closures everywhere, but certainly it's valuable to know, A, if it's human, because that's the human pathogen concern, the viral pathogen concern associated with this enteric bacteria. It's just kind of an indicator. But certainly on the animal side, if there's animal operations that are contributing to that, it doesn't look like a lot. And so we don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. But if you do have exceedances, it's worthwhile to say, all right, what could be the cause of that? And I know a couple of the tribs also had some elevated phosphorus, not hugely so, or suspended solids, but just enough to say, is there something happening in these areas that would be worth an extra look at a later date? And that's not to be make work, and that's not to make a mountain out of a molehill. It's just, we'll take a look at it, and if we think there's something that merits an additional look, we'll call it out. But you've got pretty extensive coverage on the bacteria sampling now between what's in this current contract, what PLM is doing, and what the county's been doing. So it's a great data set for the lake, and where they're sampling is certainly, I think, these are good spots where you've got the public access. So you've got good coverage there as well. One of the, not to bounce around too much, but the other aspect of the June and the August water quality sampling will be part of our scope has us doing plankton tows. It's basically looking at what's the phytoplankton composition in the lake water. And PLM is reporting that as well. As they've got green algae, which you'd expect. They've got diatoms, which is great. But we also saw some blue-green algae in the water column as well. This was microcystis, and that's the one that produces microcystin, which is the algal toxin, or the blue-green algal toxin. So it's just something that we'll kind of keep an eye on. One of our questions back to you folks is: have you seen in the last few years any indications of blue-green algal blooms at any time in the summer on the lake? Big floating mats of kind of smelly blue-green looking algae. Have there been any reports of those on the lake in the last couple of years?
I don't think so. I don't think so,
Okay.
no.
Well, that's certainly a good thing. There's so many lakes that are now starting to report those. We've got a lake up north, Black Lake, which is 10,000 acres itself, just south of Mackinac Bridge in Sheboygan County. The watershed is a huge watershed, but it's all natural. And the only thing that's on the shoreline are homes with old septic systems, and they're seeing blue-green algal blooms in late summer, early fall, even almost into winter. And we're kind of attributing that back to the phosphorus contributions that are coming in. So phosphorus and bacteria we usually associate those with problems like septic systems. I think that on Portage Lake, there are still septic systems around the shoreline, are there not?
Majority of the lake.
Yeah, majority, I mean, just the village has it.
Right.
Just,
So
yeah, just,
again, it would be something to, we suggested a revisit to the watershed management plan after we collect data this year to say, does it match? Is there something that's changed? Has it improved? Is it getting worse? And again, that's just, you've got a great baseline of information to be able to kind of gauge current conditions and potentially future concerns if you're seeing changes, so. I think just wrapping up around the schedule for item or task one is the year-end reporting. We've indicated that the final report, year-end report would come due about November 1st. That all depends too, if we get the treatment data from, I'm sure PLM will provide that. We have some applicators that wait till their due date, which is November 30th, as they have to submit that to the state for their permits. That we get that we don't get that until the very end of November. I don't think that'd be the case, but we'll be interacting with PLM, so we should be able to get those data pretty easily. The meetings and communications, I think that's what we want to make sure of, that, and we talked about that this morning internally, is the number of times that we'll be on the lake, and then the number of times that you guys will be meeting and our participation in a meeting like this. And so we had identified here under task 1G up to 6 monthly Zoom calls through the year, and then 1 year in meeting once we get the report done. And that's kind of we would assume at that point, the face-to-face interaction. The other anticipated communication is, especially when we're out working with the applicators, their timing, our timing and surveys, as we'll be communicating with you folks. And I'm assuming at this point, we'd like to have one point of contact, or we could have two. But as we're scheduling, Doug or Cindy, or Doug and Cindy, would you guys be the two best, the primary contacts for that?
Both of us, because you would be able to communicate with Dave Meister that way. Yeah, if both of us, if that's okay with the committee. I mean, talking about early detection, rapid response, if you find something that we haven't had, and, we certainly want to kind of get moving on those things and act appropriately for something new that came in. So that would be another example of communication that we would need to work out, I guess, huh?
Well, I think what we'd want to do is make sure that we're a participant in these calls, because that's a good timing to be able to relay specifics of what we've been doing and what we've been finding, and any questions you guys have. But certainly the scheduling or notifying you of when we're going to be out with PLM, they have a obligation of notifying obviously when they're going to be treating within the permit requirements. But we'll make sure that we're staying in touch with you. And then as certainly as you guys have things come up, because we'll be out to the lake a number of times in the summer, and my count is at least 9 times that we'll be coming out to the lake. We'll be able to, if there's something that pops up, as we can be in communication. If need be, we can take a little bit of extra time and meet and go out, look at a problem, or discuss a problem as need be. But our intention here is that you guys have, Doug, I think you said the third Monday of the month is when you guys normally meet.
We haven't set up this year's, and that's why Cindy added something to the agenda that I forgot to, for our organizational meeting. We just nominated people, but yeah, that's typically what it's been. The third Monday, these two guys over here, the fish guys, they're out doing, taking guys out into Lake Michigan and other things. So it's, when the summer comes along, it's pretty difficult for us to find some times, but that's what we have scheduled, right? That's what we typically schedule, is the third Monday. And you guys want to talk about that and schedule the year?
Yeah, it's fine.
That's fine.
I mean, as good as any, I guess.
And what time works best?
I don't know, I don't do many evening trips anymore, so I if whatever works best for the working people. I mean, if it's
I thought about it after the last meeting, because it really doesn't matter if I was thinking I needed to time it to be done at work, but if I do it earlier in the day and then go back to work, it doesn't make any difference. So ideally before 3 works best for me.
And whatever Alexis and,
Yeah, and I think Alexis is in the same boat, but without,
Yeah,
I
she's
can't say if
in
she's
the
got.
summer.
yeah,
We might not see Alexis too much and she's not here today in the summer.
I should usually be able to do Mondays anyways. It works best for me because it's office coverage day, so I don't have any field appointments or anything like that, so I should consistently be able to do Mondays.
Should really say you should keep it out of the office.
True. It's for Mondays.
Well, certainly we can, we'll try to be as flexible as we can with your schedules. And if you can't, if you're not able to meet, we understand that, but as long as I think it's clear that from our perspective, we want to make sure that we're communicating frequently with you guys as need be in terms of schedule. And then as we're seeing information that needs to get relayed to you, Doug, we can always get that to you and Cindy. And then
Yep.
you two decide if there's something that comes up and you need a meeting or not. You can. schedule.
Yeah. So let's schedule third Monday at 3 p.m. for the rest of the year. Is there a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Third Monday at 3 throughout the rest of the year, so now you know.
Now, I will tell you that some of those you might be Natalie and our staff driving in the car calling in.
That's
depending
fine.
where they're at, but and I'll be available as well. My anticipation is that Natalie will be on all of these when she can be, and Doug will be a part of these, especially into the early season surveys, and then Josh could be available on the water quality side if we have things to report, and I'll certainly be reviewing information as it comes in and just shepherding the scope. There's a lot of working parts of the scope. We went over that this morning, and Josh is excellent at making sure the field schedule is staying intact. So
Well,
I'm confident of that. It's just communicating with you guys when you need it.
and it's not important that you spend the whole meeting, just maybe a quick update would be helpful for us. And of course, email where I can share with group as far as the data and that kind of thing, but yeah, if you just kind of want to share information in a short, quick thing, and then we can move on with our other business, if that works best for you, yeah.
So I think probably the only other thing that we had that just to touch bases on is given that PLM you've extended their contract for a year, so that really frees up some of the time that we had talked about originally about a bidding for the chemical applicator. But then there were discussions of, hey, would Dash be a possible opportunity to try this year, or harvesting? If I could start with harvesting first, I don't see any data that shows you guys have done mechanical harvesting on the lake to date. Or am I?
Correct.
Okay.
No, you're correct.
Okay. And then certainly the other thing is on Dash, and we think about that. You could do it for Eurasia water milfoil, but I think you've got a lot more patches out in the lake than what would be cost effective. But if, for example, at a launch, you're starting to see stonewort popping up, that's in Michigan, that's normally where you've had people try to manually remove that. And in many cases, it's effective. But once it starts getting spread out, it's kind of hard to, we kind of call it the whack-a-mole plant, or it pops up in different places from year to year, depending on the lake. But if you can get it early in one location, it may be effective, but if it's spread out, it may be a little bit more or a little less effective to be using Dash to go after that. But what we're suggesting is that once we get our June survey in, we'll have a pretty good sense of what's where. I think that will help us be able to come back and say, hey, there's some opportunities to look at this as an opportunity to select locations. Probably the August survey might give us more information on potential harvesting needs. We'll have two, if July suddenly, you've got plants, you've got native plants that are growing up in many different areas, and it's becoming a recreational nuisance. That's often a time where we say, hey, this harvesting could be effective in some of these areas. What we've got to do is we try to, and we talked about that, I think, at the interview meeting, is we try not to harvest in areas where you've got a lot of Eurasian water milfoil or stonewort, because that fragments, it could displace, and you're spreading the problem versus controlling a nuisance condition. So, that's some of the balance that we'd walk through when we look at either a dash or harvesting as an option. So as we go into the summer, we can bring that back up. And as we see opportunities or value, we'll bring it up. Or as you guys want to express this, hey, we'd like to try this. This would be a good year to probably look at that once we get some additional data. And if there was some work to do bid packages for those without having to do PLM and this, then I think it will fit in well.
Good, thank you for considering that. I think as a committee, as a group, there's been a lot of interest in that area. People have expressed a whole lot of interest in trying other things rather than chemical treatment. So yes, I think that would be, we appreciate you looking into that.
The other sidebar comment that we had this morning was the notes that PLM had been talking about with purple loosestrife. Have you guys been using the purple loosestrife beetle then on some of the patches that you have seen over time?
It hasn't, I haven't seen a whole lot of it,
I don't think
frankly.
we've done purple loosestrife since I've been.
No, we haven't treated it, and I've not, well, when they originally developed the special assessment district, there was a lot of
Pragmatics.
and frag, and there was a lot of effort put into that early in our special assessment district decisions. That was in the 1990s, I believe, and since then, we've had, the complaints that I've been getting, and we have somebody go out and take a look, and it's native frag, and the loose trade, I had not seen a whole lot of it. I've seen,
Okay.
and I pulled a couple, but it's not a big problem right now.
But I tell you, your team may want to just be cognizant that, our lake is down about 1.5 feet. And when the water drops 1.5 feet, it's opened up the lake basin. The footprint of the lake is big time.
Yeah.
So you have a lot more exposed shoreline right now that's probably highly nutrient rich, and it's good fertile soil. And, it could impact, what's gonna grow because it's been covered in 1.5 feet of water, 2 feet of water, and the water's down so much, there's way more shoreline exposed. And the second thing is that when we talked about shoreline control last several years, it's been, the effects of hardening. Well, these hardened structures you got to step down to the hardened structures now and walk, sometimes, several yards to get to the water's edge. So, it's going to be a different lake. And when we had some parameters about, if you can't boat at this end of the lake because the weeds aren't impacting it. Well, the weeds that were 1 foot below the water probably are going to be out of the water. So it's going to be a big impact, because we had our water way down, and I don't see it changing that much personally, even at the high water time in the middle of the summer. It's substantially down after the ice went off, and it's not just us, it's Lake Michigan, it's every lake that's connected to Lake Michigan right now. It's down substantially.
So we during all of our surveys, we'll make note, Natalie and her team will make note if they see purple loosestrife, and I will express this is self-interest. We started out growing purple loosestrife beetles for wetlands restoration projects, because no matter how much money we spent on native plants, purple loosestrife always came back. The seeds are everywhere. And so we've been growing beetles every year for some of our wetland projects. People have said, hey, we like how you do it in the pots, and you just put the pot next to the other plants. But the only time that you really see where the beetles work is when you have really, really heavy stands, or you're starting to get heavy stands of purple loosestrife. Otherwise, it's education. Hey, pull it and put it in a bag, throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, I don't see a heavy stands, right, or at least.
Yeah, which is good. Which is
Yeah,
good.
very
And
good.
with fluctuating water levels, you probably won't have it. Because the purple loosestrife is somewhat sensitive to water levels. And if they're fluctuating, you probably won't have the big of a deal. I think the Phragmites, it sounds like, has been really, I mean, it has kind of been popping in, and that's the brutal one. In a matter of a couple of years, that can go everywhere. Purple loosestrife, it takes much more time, but we'll obviously be aware of what PLM has been treating in the past and watching for that as well.
There's some narrow leaf cattail in front of the library, quite a bit of it there. And then I think there's probably hybrid, right, probably now.
And just so you guys are aware too, so with Parks and Rec, I am working with contractor to do invasives survey of all the park properties, so that will include Eagle View and Feldhawk, as well as the wetlands property. So we should have that this year.
Good.
And the, behind here, was it, what?
Yeah, that Eagle View right here in the connected one, Feldhawk, those wetlands there, so
Yeah,
I don't think it extends all the way behind the township property. They're
but
just
there is,
focused on the park.
what is that?
There's not weed back
Not
there.
we, thank you,
Japanese.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's part of what we want to make sure there's clarity on too, is within the water itself. We anticipate that's PLM's responsibility. Where we see Phragmites will report it, and they can also do the treatment there. Knotweed, we know is more of a terrestrial plant. If we're seeing it from the boat in the shoreline, I know there have been a couple locations identified. We'll certainly put that out there. We'll want to be sure though of who's going to be treating that though. I don't know if PLM has actually treated knotweed where they've seen it.
I got them to do it last year behind the township office.
Okay,
And it, did pretty good, I mean, it's still there.
It's usually a multi-year treatment.
Yeah.
I would say, I don't know about the behind the township office, but I think you really need to have a terrestrial expert do the knotweed or a local invasive species
Exactly.
network. So I would say, as far as Phragmites and loosestrife, that would be the main concern for you guys to document during inventories. I guess if you see other terrestrial plants that are a concern, document them and let us know about them, and then I can make sure that it gets to the right person responsible for treatment.
yeah, and I think that just comes back to good communications, because our teams oftentimes they say you got to get off of the lake soon as as long as you're on it. They're very effective, but we don't leave the water until we've got all of our information. And so if we're seeing adjacent to shoreline as well, we'll make note of that. And then that's part of what Natalie had mentioned. The brief summary is literally once we're off the lake, we're driving back, somebody is typing in the iPad the summary of what we found. So it's rapid feedback on that. And I think what'll be important there is if it's not directly related to the water, but we think it's worthy of reporting and there's other options for treatment outside of the SAD, we'll want to get that information in your hands and we'll just plan on that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking we probably could move along.
What else do you have, Mark? You're good?
That's it. In terms of schedules, just making sure that, this was a kickoff to make sure that you guys understand what we're planning and that's consistent with what you're expecting.
Sounds good. We'll be looking forward to your visit in May, and yeah, let's keep in touch and we can help organize that. It depends on how many people want to come. You let me know, Tyler, or if you want anybody, if there's a group that want to do that, or if not, I can take my vote out, and we can fit probably most everybody in my vote, so.
All
We'll
right.
let you know on that. Tyler will let us know on that. keep in touch and.
All right, sounds good. Hey, the one question is, are the perch biting yet in the lake?
Go ahead, Bill.
We can't tell you that, it's secret information.
I won't ask where.
Yeah, no,
They are, it's been really good this spring. In fact, I've got several compliments on it. And this is kind of what we're dealing with is, even though the perch fishing is better, everybody's convinced it's because we quit treating so many weeds.
Oh, no.
So that's what we're hearing from the fishermen.
Oh,
just shake your head, just shake your head, say, yeah, you're right, our treatments are down, yeah.
Well, hopefully some of our ecological tracking will give you a little bit better handle on that. So often the challenge is you get anecdotal information. What we've tried to do is just make it more quantitative. So you could say, hey, this is really with the condition and how it's changed over the years, to kind of agree with or refute, conversations around what's happening or what's not happening. So.
so there's, often we put a newsletter out with our tax forms, and maybe that would be, some of that information would be appropriate to include in the tax forms, just to, get that data out there, rather than, it's not because we're not treating, it's because of, maybe these other factors, I don't know.
All right.
So that's important for us to keep in mind as we get along towards the end of the year. We like to send out a little one page or both sides flyer that with the tax forms that talks.
Or just the fact that we separated the lake manager and the applicator and, and
Yeah.
to me, that
Yeah.
would be real helpful just to, help some of the people who had a little issue with that.
Settle them down, yeah.
Good. All right, well, with that, we're excited to be able to work with you folks this year, in the next couple of years. And if you have any questions, Natalie or I will respond quickly, and we'll start communicating on planning around the May visit.
Sounds good. Thank you for attending today, and I'm looking forward to working with you further.
All right, very good. Thanks all.
Thank you for your
Right.
time.
All right,
Thanks.
bye. We only have 10 minutes. What do you guys want to cover now? We have
You
revision.
guys can stay later. I just gotta leave. I can.
I gotta leave too, I gotta make dinner for my wife.
We're
Yeah.
gonna do our recommendation for vacant position.
Oh, yeah. What did you hear, Cindy? Did you hear that we can maybe keep both of them, or?
Not the way our bylaws are.
Well, that's why
Seven.
I was gonna, if we start with bylaw revision, that may change that. I
Yeah,
mean,
Yeah, but I think the township board's got to approve. the bylaw.
right, that's what I'm saying. If we just hold off on appointing someone, we could change it to at least 7 and request. I don't care.
Yeah.
I just, was a thought.
certainly entertain a motion.
Needed to maybe get done.
Yeah, certainly
But
entertain a
yeah,
motion.
go over the bylaws.
So I just made some notes on the things that I saw. I changed that. I was trying to,
So can I stop?
yeah,
So under committee members, you want the wording to be, the committee shall consist of
At
at
least.
least,
7 members.
okay.
And the other administrative error that I found was section 13.
That kind of like,
Yeah, changing March to April 13/1. That way it's consistently April for all of them, for election of officers, review of the bylaws.
don't have organizational meeting till the new fiscal year, so.
The only other thing that I was trying to think that, and I couldn't think of a good way to word it in here, but essentially power of this committee to make decisions on treatment methodology. Well,
It's funny, we just talked about it when we were approving
Mhm.
Kaiser's contract, and it was like, okay, so again, what are we doing? And I said, well, what you guys told me. So yeah,
There is, so,
It seems it should be under purpose, objectives and duty.
yeah, so I had started writing, under. 4E, assist township board in oversight of work and evaluation. Was thinking of tweaking that, our. Administration of approved services. Or treatment timing, something along those lines. And then also further in. Under section 12, finances, authority and reporting. There's a clause, neither the committee nor its members shall have independent authority to spend money. The committee may incur expenses within the established budget after prior approval from the township. Township supervisor clerk. And that's the thing, we're getting, I guess, prior approval with our budget to spend so much on treatment. So shouldn't anything within the budget be a incurred expense for us to?
I'm on a different board right now. I just got this new thing we advise the director of the fishery. And it's a citizens advisory thing. And what they recommended to us, we're just doing this right now with them, is that we should be, the minute we're an advisory, we go through, we look at all the stuff, and then we make an advisory to the township, because the minute you start making decisions, now you're you could be liable to situation where you could, if you make the wrong decision or this and that or whatever, and you don't, and because we just are lay people on this committee, we don't get the same governmental things that the people in the township board get if they make a mess up. So they're saying you gotta be real careful about saying, about our decisions, we gotta, I think, just make sure we continue to be in a, we recommend to the board and then they approve our recommendation, not, we have like the financial say, or, we have say, we're making recommendations, but we're not allocating the money.
Right, but we ran into issues with our rapid response.
And I think that is an issue. I
Yeah.
still think we need to really just be an advisory thing and not, I mean, that's where when they start saying liability, I'm like, okay. I know my personal assets aren't gonna be tied up in some court because I get some stupid named in some suit because we did something silly.
Yeah.
Because we don't, I don't even know how this works, but my sport fish association, we carry an insurance policy, all the board of directors have, they got, in case they get sued or something because of someone gets hurt or killed in a tournament or something. So I'm just, I just wanna make sure we keep an advisory role, so we're not, I don't wanna be, or I can't be on the committee, because I don't wanna be,
Yeah,
have my personal assets.
yeah, and I'm just trying to think of how we can streamline.
I don't disagree.
So
I mean, what's that thing?
the one thing I would say is that the township board, to me, is being really responsive with meetings and stuff, if we need a special meeting. And a special meeting would only delay 18 hours. Cause you need enough time to post it. I know that David and Ed think that, my understanding based on our last conversation is that with, the contracts in place, that if the lake manager, for instance, says we need something, that, I'm supposed to inform them monthly, but that it's not, Roger Berger doing, just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
But that it's not an issue what we do, but it's interesting because if we go ahead and move, then that is like, we're making decisions instead of being a recommending body.
I prefer an advisory role and rely on the township to act quickly on something that comes up quickly. They approved the treatment contract or chemical treatment contract, and I'm not sure specifically what it says about if they see something that's a brand new thing out there and they're in the boat and they're treating, and
The treatment contract had the exact same language that,
I can't remember that.
yeah,
Point.
Lex, or resent it to you.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I may have sent it to everybody. I intended to.
And we had a little history of making at one time making recommendations, and the township went against the recommendation, and we
Yeah.
let them know about it.
Yeah.
And I think they knew that, you know what, we're not spending all this time doing all this work. And, you know, you better have a good reason why you don't support what we give to you.
Exactly.
And I think they heard about it, and I
Yeah.
think they been receptive.
Right. Right.
So,
You know, I don't,
and if that's what we do, then we don't really have much to change in the bylaws. I just wanna make sure that we have some sort of process to make sure that we can get a special meeting called with the township.
or can the township supervisor, without the township board approval on, you know, a rapid response issue, could he be comfortable making that decision? And we can follow up with that, but,
Unless we
if
were,
we give them a call, they're on a boat and they just wanna nuke some other plant that's really bad one, and I don't know. We'll have to follow up with that.
and it could be another, if we wanted to do more work, we could develop a rapid response protocol that is approved by the township theoretically, so that if a situation does arise, then at least the contractor knows that they can just take care of it without delaying further. Then it wouldn't be our decision. It would just be a protocol that we developed that the township board approved.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Next meeting, maybe just think of bringing that up.
You have to have a limit on expenses incurred for a particular treatment, you know, we don't want, oh, we noticed this 10 acres of whatever, and we treated it because it was in the rapid response protocol, and it's a $30,000 bill.
No. I mean, there is that one plant down, you know, in southern Michigan that's a really bad one.
Yeah, hydrilla, like it should be, it
Yeah.
should be included.
That should be one that just kind of automatically, if you see that and you got a small thing, you know, maybe we just,
I don't even know if that PLM would be allowed to do that. I think the state needs to be notified and they get involved then, but.
yeah, and they would do it. In fact, they would
Well,
hire.
I think
a contractor.
PLM was contracted out for the population in southern Michigan through the state, but
That's right.
I think the state wants to be involved if they hear that's here to confirm.
so. I don't know. Maybe think about it more this year, see if we run into any other issues.
So
Proceed as usual this year until we have an issue, and then if it results in us having to develop something, we'll have a better idea of what it is we need to develop.
That may come into, what does that look like by, you know, what's that look like when they do the survey and they find it?
Yeah.
Or if they're out there on the water and they find it, let's say they're treating. What's the rapid response look like on the contractors then? Because, you know, what are the chances they're carrying what they need to treat it?
Yeah,
They may be 7 to 10 days before they can get there anyway, so the 18 hours may work fine.
yeah. Good point. Okay. Other items? What else we have?
Took care of all the meeting schedule, so.
Treatment contract for 25, yeah. I briefly mentioned that we did get, and we talked about that Bree and her group is the chemical treatment, and the township approved that. After that last meeting, I called Bree, and she said, she kind of took the words right out of my mouth. And is this what you want? Yeah, that's exactly what I want. Cindy and I had a conversation with her, and she had the tentative contract the next day, and the lawyer, and we had to change it, and it changed before 2 days later, it was ready to go for the township to approve, so I remember.
We didn't change our contract.
Well, it was just that you had to comment, it is an extension and we didn't wanna have,
Oh, yeah.
we didn't wanna
Yeah,
have
but
it.
she was calling, she said an extension, said you can't extend a contract that's already terminated.
Right,
You've got to make it a new contract. That's right, I forgot about that.
yeah, so we got that going.
But I think that helped our new lake manager hit the ground running and not being behind the 8 ball and, you
Right,
know, it's, I think
Yeah.
it helped them, give them a chance to get their feet underneath them.
exactly.
Well, and like was discussed today, it may open an opportunity for us to have the funds available to do exploring dash and all of that kind of stuff.
Harvesting, yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, they have time now to do that kind of stuff, so that was cool.
Gives everybody breathing room for this year.
And you have that communication between the previous lake manager and the new one to, seamless, moving ahead.
I know what I wanted to ask you.
Yes,
Is it, so am I okay now to post on our site the 2024 report?
yes, I think
I had a question about that, cause Bree sent the 2024 report, then she asked for the E. coli data after that, or was it before?
it was right around the same time, I can't remember the time.
Cause I thought I never got a final copy. But then the copy that I have has the E. coli data in it, so I didn't know what let me see.
I remember that too. I
Yeah,
don't remember if we got finalized, but
Yeah, I think I waited and she sent something additional and I sent it out again after, I think that's how it went.
okay, so December 11th, please see attached. At 9:59. December 11th at 2:18, you sent her the E. coli results for 2024,
Okay,
and then she never responded again, so. Yeah, the one that we got
Okay.
December 11th, at least that's the last one I have, that's the last email I have with Bree in it. And if I search for E. coli. Fecal indicator, Portage Lake E. coli 2024 results. There's a table and it's, let's see, 40.4, 31.5. Just let me see if it matches the one that Doug sent.
Hey Doug, I got a roll. I
Yeah.
just wanna make sure the 19th is good.
May 19th.
That, I'm getting that 1, 2, 3, third Monday of the month, May 19th looks, like our time, if that's what we're gonna stick with,
Okay, sounds good.
at 3 o'clock.
So
Oh.
so this is truly like the rescheduled April 19th meeting, right?
Yeah, because when we talked last meeting, a lot of people
April
couldn't make it,
21st, sorry.
couldn't make it the third April.
I'm gonna be out of town, I know that for sure.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah, I think we had some issues, so.
Okay, so we're going from this to, as Kevin said, May 19th.
Yeah,
Okay.
Unless if something comes up, you feel like we need to.
Yeah.
Schedule one, we can.
Yeah, no, I think we're in a good position. We have the lake manager, we just had that discussion and there is Roger, we're taping this. So we'll be able to get this, I don't know where you put this, Cindy, that you can view at some point we may host this meeting and people can look it over.
And I think if the bylaws can be changed and we got 2 good candidates, I think we ought to just sit down and interview them or whatever and just, make a decision.
Okay,
I mean, it's a good problem to have.
it is.
Our harbor commission right now is, we barely have 4 or 5 people come on a regular basis. We've been looking for new people, so it's good that 2 people want to be on this.
I ran into Alexis and she said, well, yeah, 2 good people, I just soon I could step down and I like you, Alexis, you're a smart person, I like you, have different opinions on this committee, I appreciate that, so. I mean, if we can change the bylaws to at least 7, then we're good to go. So do you want to make a decision today, Kevin? Is that what you're saying on?
No, I'm saying that I thought you're gonna look at change that part of the bylaw so you could you know, have it a little more flexibility. I don't,
Well, and our meeting got moved, so our meeting is the 9th. The 16th. So it'll be on this month's agenda.
however you guys wanna handle it, but I'd just like to get it, you know,
Let's wait then.
yeah. That Roger's been beaming in and some other, you know, that other fellow or whatever, it'd just be nice to, they probably want some closure, and, you know, if it's gonna happen or not.
Well, I'm certainly willing to entertain a motion right now if you have some thoughts, Kevin.
I worked with Roger on the Harbor Commission, and I know he was at every meeting, you know, and
Yeah.
gave good input. And represented the village well, I thought, and so that's all my experience. The other gentleman, unfortunately, I just don't know him or anything about him.
I can comment a little bit about the other gentleman, or you could. I know that, you know, the watershed, they had different waters, used to have meetings with the conservation district, with different watersheds with meat. And I was invited because I was on a DNR and ran a lot
Sure.
of boat launches around. And he was the Forest Service representative on those meetings. Smart, good guy, friendly. I'd like to have both of them, frankly.
Okay. I don't just know Roger did a good
Yeah,
job.
you know, we can put Roger on right away if you want, if that's what you wanna do.
Wherever I mean, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned, because
Did I
it's,
characterize that correctly, Tyler?
Yeah, I haven't worked with Chris a ton. I know other people from my office have, but he pops up on TU projects and things like that, so.
Well, so the option is postpone the decision until you see what happens with the bylaws, or else appoint one now. And then if the bylaws get changed, you can invite the other one.
You could do that.
and I would, you know, personally, I would, another, I mean, not, you know, tooting Roger's all the way, but he lives in the village, and so
Yeah.
it's nice to have some
Right.
village representation, and he used to be the village president, so. You know what, he was, like I say, on the Harbor Commission, always there, kept us informed, knew what was going on, he knew what was going on in the village.
Yep.
Helped our meeting, and we got stuff done, you know,
I would
wants to
like to
support
see
that
both of them, but
Sure.
I would, if I could only choose one, I would choose Roger also.
Yep, so is that a motion then, Kevin?
I got a motion that we should put Roger Berger as our new committee member on the invasive species.
Is there
I'm
support?
gonna change the wording to recommend to the township board.
I'll recommend to the township board.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah.
That's the way it's got, that's the
Yeah.
way it.
I got it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Roger. So you heard May 19th, you're on
At 3.
at 3 o'clock.
And I said you never miss, so don't let me down.
I'm writing down in more than one place this time. I apologize for being late.
Yeah, yeah. No. Assuming the township board approves.
Yeah.
All right,
And that caveat, I
Yep.
don't know.
I don't know.
thank you,
Hey, thanks
everybody.
again, everybody.
We'll see you in a month.
Well, at least I don't feel bad, I'm not.
Recording and. No, yeah, I mean.
I was like,